Hi, I'm Metta Spencer. Today I get to have a good conversation with some new old friends. I met them a couple of years ago and I was so impressed with them. I've kind of kept my eye on with the idea that we're going to get back together and have a good conversation one of these times. And this is the day. Jonathan Love and his partner Satya Robinson are people who live half the year in Berkeley on a boat in California, they tell me, only they can't go because of the fires going on there now, and half the year in Caledon, Ontario.
Wonderful to see you, Metta.
Yeah, so great to see you again, Metta.
They are very engaged with Project Drawdown, which I think is probably the most promising and useful project that I have seen in helping us understand how to solve the climate crisis. So we're going to talk about climate today and specifically about Project Drawdown. So let's begin immediately by asking John, will you please explain what the concept of drawdown is? What is this term anyway?
Well, yeah, so it's actually been applied to the climate crisis by Paul Hawken, who gathered together the researchers to ask the question, is it possible to reverse global warming? And so, what he meant by reverse global warming is to actually bring the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere back down to levels that are historically livable by human beings and other species that depend on a particular climate range. And that just stopping carbon emissions is not going to do it. That we actually have to, and this is to draw down carbon from the atmosphere into where it was before on Earth, in various what they call carbon sinks. So drawdown the concept is the point at which greenhouse gases stop going up, the concentration stops going up, and turns the corner and begins to come down on a year-over-year or month-over-month basis. So,
that inflection point, they call it.
Inflection point. Uh-huh. That's the drawdown point. And the concept is that we must reach that point. We cannot just, and this is the term from the COVID, flatten the curve. Mm-hmm. If we flatten the curve, we maintain the level of carbon that's in the atmosphere right now. The problem is that the heating continues. So there's a lag between when you start drawing the carbon back down and when the heating impact of that carbon in the atmosphere retreats. So if you just flatten the curve, we're going to bake ourselves just as surely as if we kept going on as business as usual.
So first of all, when do you think that inflection point could happen? And then after the inflection point happens, the drawdown point, how much longer will it be before the temperature begins to respond too? Because you say it keeps on heating. So you've pointed to some bad news that we may as well face right off the bat.
Yeah. So the scenarios, the drawdown. So drawdown is a project as well. So Project Drawdown. Everybody should go and look at drawdown.org and look at the material for Project Drawdown, because that's where the research is. And the research is fact-based, research-based, peer-reviewed, in a way that those solutions can actually be modeled to be able to tell over the next 30 or 40 years how much carbon they would draw down if they were scaled up at various rates. Okay. And so Project Drawdown produced two scenarios. The best scenario says that we could reach drawdown sometime in the mid 2040s. So
that's the earliest.
That's the earliest. Mm-hmm. A less aggressive scenario that they also published is somewhere in the mid 2050s. So about a 10-year difference there. And the basic difference between the two scenarios is how fast we ramp up renewable energy. So that's the basic difference between the two scenarios.
Well, how much difference will renewable energy make? That is, I guess the argument is the purpose for doing it is to stop emissions.
Right.
We get rid of bad energy, replace it with good energy that doesn't emit stuff. Now, as I understand it, that's only part of the game, that stopping the emissions is essential, but we can't stop enough emissions to actually get to drawdown, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. If we stopped all emissions, we would flatten the curve and maybe start to drift back down over time because the Earth would, produce more vegetation and grow anyway. But the last time we talked, you mentioned some articles from Bill Gates, and so I looked into that, and basically the Drawdown research agrees with his point of view that renewable energy, even though that's where his investments are really focused, is only 25% of the problem. So
now, I should clarify what my concern was. I was actually alarmed because I had just seen a video or clip of a video in which Bill Gates was saying, we can't get there with just renewable energy. Solar and wind and all that is fine, but that's only going to handle a fraction,
right.
Some portion of what we need. And it was, he didn't really, in that clip, didn't say what he thought the real solution was. I know that he's investing a lot of money in trying to try out far out ideas for innovations that are maybe not very likely to be realistic or to turn out well, but that he thinks we need to try everything we can practically. So anyway, that's sort of the background to my question. Does Drawdown have such a pessimistic view of how urgent and how grave the current challenges are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you can look at, they have these wonderful diagrams in the Drawdown material on the website and in the new publication called Drawdown Review that give you, pie charts and bubbles, and they can show you which sectors have the largest potential for either stopping emissions or sequestering, drawing it back down. Mm-hmm. And so they divide it into, there are three main categories they divide it into. One is, basically reduce sources, that's stop emitting. The other is enhance the sinks. So, and all the known viable sinks that are modeled in Drawdown are natural. They're all about soil and growth of vegetation. They're not mechanical. There are no solutions that have been sufficiently proven and scientifically reviewed to be able to be included in this study for pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. The only way we know how to do it is photosynthesis. Soil.
Well, but they're okay. But there are really interesting proposals, like weathering stone. You take rocks, smash them into powder, and sprinkle them on the soil. And certain kinds of rocks will absorb the thing. Now, whether that's economically feasible, or even whether, to my mind, one question would be, would it take more energy to crush these rocks and sprinkle them than they will actually save? But at any rate, the point is, it's an innovation. It is sort of, you could say, geoengineering.
Right. But the great thing about the Drawdown solutions are that there is no speculation in them. And, so here's the key. The key thing is we don't even need to go there to know that we can reach Drawdown. There are enough solutions that involve natural processes and solutions that are already underway, that we don't have to go to geoengineering to reach drawdown. Paul Hawken and his team of researchers asked the question, can we reverse global warming using proven solutions already in existence that we can map, measure, and model today? And the answer to that is yes. So, and maybe some of these other things will be proven and be proven safe and that kind of thing, in which case we get there faster.
Now you say 2040 is the earliest. That would be if we all pull up our socks and really get busy, right?
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
They take it very seriously, much more seriously than anyone is doing now, right?
And people, the world is taking it more and more seriously. I mean, so most people have heard of a town or a country or maybe even their city having declared a climate emergency, right? So right now, there are about 1 billion people who live in a jurisdiction that has declared a climate emergency.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Where are these climate emergencies? I don't think I've even been in one.
You can look that up on the what's called the Declare movement.
Okay. Now, when you've got yourself declared as an emergency, what changes?
Well, that's
a good question.
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
Most cities also are working on something called a climate action plan. And the key here is to take the drawdown solutions, identified viable solutions, and map them onto what can happen in a particular locality. So different cities will have different priorities based on what's available to that population. Project Drawdown looks at it globally, but each locality has to look on their own and say which of these solutions apply here and which have the biggest impact. Modeling and in particular climate modeling is notoriously complex. The drawdown is making available its methodology and framework. There was last year at the University of Pennsylvania, there was a whole convocation of researchers coming together to ask the question, how can we localize this methodology? So that work is being done, and I'm sure if somebody wants to tap into that, Project Drawdown, Chad Frischman is the director of research there, and he would be the person to contact about how much progress has been made in localizing the numbers.
Okay, so we've got a goal of 2040 to get to drawdown. Okay, let's get busy. What do we have to do?
You want to talk about any of the particular solutions?
Well, I think one of the things that we've noticed with the concept of drawdown, even the word drawdown or project drawdown, is that a lot of people don't even know it exists. It's quite a phenomenon. When we first started getting into it, after about a year into it, 2017, 2018, we would meet environmentalists that were really active, and they would say, I haven't heard about this. How come I haven't heard about this? So I think the concept of having solutions, that there actually are solutions that have, been created, that are happening, that, based on the Project Drawdown research shows that if we do a nominal amount of those solutions, that we can actually reverse global warming by 2050, is a message that's just not out there. And it's just, just getting that message out is huge.
Putting a hopeful spin into the conversation matters.
Yeah, we've had lots of different creative ways of sharing it. I mean, for example, We've put Drawdown books in our fitness center locally, at the yacht club over in Berkeley when we're in California. And it's so, we had the book down, and I just came to the table at the yacht club, and this guy had picked it up, and he was reading through it, and he looked at me and he said, wow, these illustrations are really beautiful. And then he would say, there's a lot of history in this. And he said, I've got a daughter that's in environmental science. I'm going to buy her a book because I think that would be something she'd be interested in. But I'm also interested in it from a history perspective. So what's really interesting about the actual book is that it really is accessible to a wide range of different types of readers and interest.
And it is so pretty. It is such a beautiful book with the photography. It's a coffee table book almost.
We're giving copies to municipalities, to counselors, people in the government, and we're also hearing that municipalities or members or counselors actually have a copy. We were on a call with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Right.
And we, put in the chat, does anyone know about Drawdown? Does anyone know about Drawdown? And then suddenly at the end, the lady held up the book and said, of course I know about Drawdown. I read it every day. And then in the schools, it's kind of fun. We have teachers that are creating mini drawdowns in the public school system, bringing it into the eco clubs.
It's sophisticated, but it's pretty clear too.
Very, very accessible. Very accessible. Very clear.
Yeah.
And
okay. Let's talk a little bit about some of the recommendations. I mean, what is the good news? What are some of the good things that we could be doing that would really have a lot of payoff? And by the way, how expensive is this? How much are we going to be out of pocket? How much is this going to wreck our economy?
So the really great news is that reaching drawdown does not cost us anything. In fact, over the course of the 30 years of the ramp up of these solutions, we save, depending on the particular time you check in on the number and stuff like that, but at least $72 trillion. $72 trillion
for the world.
Net savings for the global implementation of all these solutions. Yes, there's a few $billion that need to be invested up front, but the savings over the long term are immense. The other thing is that, with the exception of a couple, like nuclear energy, these solutions are what they call no regrets solutions. That is, we should do them anyway. We should all have healthier food. We should all have more forests. We should all have clean air to breathe.
We should all stop wasting food.
We should all stop wasting food. Women and girls should be empowered and have access to education and birth control if they want it. All of these things are things we should do anyway. It's like that. I don't know if people have seen that, what is now for us like a famous cartoon where there's a lecturer lecturing about all the things we need to do to affect climate change. And somebody in the background says, what if this is all a hoax and we turn out to have made a better world for nothing?
That's wonderful. Good. Well, okay, let's go for the hoax. In fact, I wonder how much public opinion is changing. I hear that if you get outside of the Beltway in Washington, that you even find some Republicans changing their minds and believing that global warming is real and that things have to be done about it. To what extent I know that Drawdown is not a political action movement. You probably want to be accepted by all parties everywhere. It makes sense. But you're not, you're not equally accepted, at least in the US. And I presume that the right-wing people also tend in other countries to be more skeptical. But is there any research about how much that is changing, if at all?
Yeah, there are always polls being done. And, the good news is that the concern about climate change has risen dramatically just in the last 5 years. So it was trailing downward before that, and now it's spiking back up.
Excuse me, but why would it have been trailing downward? Do you understand that? I don't get that.
No, I'm not going to offer an explanation really, except that in the the early 70s and 80s, late 70s, early 80s, there was a big environmental movement that Earth Day, when Earth Day started and things like that. So concern got pretty high at that point, but it reached a certain level, and I'm talking in the United States. I'm not talking about global, that I don't know about. But I want to comment on one of the things that you said, that outside the Beltway, it's a certain way. Well, here's the thing that Republicans should know, is that inside the Beltway, it's a not so well-kept secret that many, many, many of the elected officials who are Republican actually do believe in climate change. They actually do believe it's human caused, and they actually support measures to ameliorate and stop emissions. So, but they're afraid to talk about it because they're afraid they will lose their funding from the party central, controllers who determine who gets their campaign funded and who doesn't. And I know that because my friends work in what's called the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is advocating a policy of carbon fee and dividend. So, and they're working with bipartisan support, and they're getting it. But they also aren't at liberty to talk about the people that they know on the Republican side of the aisle who would be willing to, if their party would let them, support a fee on carbon.
Well, that's very welcome news to me, except in another sense it's not, because it just reinforces my despair in a way about the failures of democracy. I mean, it means that even if a politician thinks that he could get reelected because his constituents would vote for him if he came out in favor of stopping climate change, he's still afraid to do it because the moneyed interests would kill him before he could run a good campaign. Right. That has to be the argument, I presume, that's why it won't happen. And that is a whole different conversation.
And we could get into some real scary things about the national politics, and not just in the U.S., but other places where dictator wannabes are in the wings or in office. But here's the real thing, is that the drawdown solutions are almost all local. And the strongest place for support for climate action is municipalities.
Aha. Oh, good. All right.
There's
good. Go on. I that clicks in with some other things that I've been thinking about and hearing about. There is, by the way, something happening like, I'm not going to be able to get the right language for it, but something like a parliament of mayors.
Yes.
Do you know anything about that? That's not the terminology, but what is it?
There is. I'm not going to be able to come up with the name, the exact name either. But yes, there's an international organization of mayors that is, very, very actively implementing climate solutions in their municipalities, worldwide, and it's, very prominent. In Canada, there's an organization called the Climate Caucus, which is available to any elected official at a municipal level, not just mayors, but councilors and city managers and people like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the Climate Caucus. They're specifically organized around making sure that municipalities do all they can to, and it used to be to reach zero emissions. Now there's starting to be a conversation about reaching drawdown, or drawing carbon back down. So that is now entering the conversation. Before we had targets like, 80% below our 1990 levels and things like that.
Yeah.
Then we had zero emissions by a certain time, carbon neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're starting to hear municipalities adopt declarations that they're going to reach drawdown and bring carbon back home where it belongs.
That is beautiful, beautiful discovery, because I hadn't heard that they're doing that. I think that's a good thing for us to talk about. Is it seems to me misguided that many of my environmentalist friends or climate change people have been reluctant, or were for a while anyway, reluctant to talk about ways in which you could suck carbon out of the atmosphere and tuck it away someplace. In wood, or in the soil, or even in the oceans. And they were slow to talk about sequestering, because they seem to feel that if you gave people the notion that that was possible, that it would be a temptation for people to say, oh, we could go ahead and emit all we want because we could just take it out again and put it away easily. Well, of course, it wouldn't be easy. It's not that easy anyway. But so they didn't want to talk about it, and I think it's a mistake. It did give people the illusion that all we have to do is try to stop emitting so much CO2 or methane or whatever greenhouse gases. And that's just not the case. So let's talk about the not alternatives, but in addition to reduction of carbon emissions. What else do you got there, Jonathan?
Well, there's a whole section of the drawdown work that is about supporting sinks, and it's all about regenerative agriculture practices, and various ways of increasing the carbon content of the soil, and literally just planting more trees. I mean, reforesting areas that have been deforested. I mean, the research shows that since the advent of human altering of the ecosphere, we have lost somewhere around 60% of the tree cover. Mm-hmm. So, bringing back the trees that are missing, those trees are those 60% of, and depending on the number that how people count trees, 1 trillion trees, that amount of wood has been turned into carbon air, which is now up there holding greenhouse gases in. I mean, it's acting as greenhouse gases, keeping the heat in. So, you take half a trillion trees and put them back on Earth, you've got a good start to taking care of the reaching drawdown. But I did want to say, Metta, that the thing is that the research shows that there's no combination short of all of them that lead to drawdown. Maybe if you get to a couple down at the very, very low end, maybe you put and take a little bit, but basically we have to do all of them. It's so yes, you can prioritize. You can say that offshore wind and concentrated solar have a big impact, and you can say that regenerative agriculture has a huge impact. But there's also, things like reduced food waste, and eating a plant-rich diet. Those are two that have enormous significance if implemented throughout the world. I just read
mentioning that one of the most interesting thing that I noticed in the first Drawdown book was that they rank ordered the amount of, well, how to put it? I want to say effectiveness, but that's too vague a word. How much carbon you could save or sequester by each technology, so that they could say this is the highest payoff that you can do for a certain amount of effort. And down here, these at the bottom, out the number 80 or so, it's worth doing. You must do it, but it's not quite as urgent or as much impact as the top ones. So what were they, per what were they measuring?
You had it right. There's a thing called greenhouse gas equivalent or carbon equivalent. So you can use carbon dioxide and methane and compare them, even though methane is 2,000 or so times more potent as greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So they put it all on an equivalent. What is the equivalent CO2 saved or sequestered over the course of the 30-year study period that they used? Mm-hmm. So the original book did rank them all, mm-hmm. and you can find that on the Drawdown site, but they've gone away from that because of this notion that they all have to happen, and because as the research changes, and depending on which scenario or what you do, those rankings changes. So there is no absolute number that each solution has, and this is why the local measurement is going to be so critical to determine what's most impactful where you are. Yes, we can look at, given today's research, refrigerants, managing refrigerants, because that's methane, or CFCs, is the most impactful. Yeah. But, most of us don't have any access to doing anything about that. So for my life, managing refrigerants is not a big deal. Mm-hmm. However, reducing food waste and eating a plant-rich diet are impactful immediately. Buying an electric car, impactful immediately. So relative to where you are, is to say what's going to be the most impactful.
Okay, you live in Caledon. If you take a ride, you just went shopping today, Satya. In your vicinity, do you see any changes happening that you could say is going to make any difference? Are there more trees around there? Are people eating differently? What do you notice about life, everyday life around you?
Reducing food waste and plant-rich diet has really shown up a lot in the number of people that have been growing gardens this summer. It has just exploded. And we get our soil from Riverdale Farms out in Inglewood. And he was saying, and he does a CSA program, and he was saying, you know, I don't know how busy I'm going to be this summer. It's kind of a little bit of a concern because everybody, you know, lots of people are growing their own vegetables. So it's very, you know, that's something that's been really interesting. We've got 2 kids that are back from out west, and the whole group of us, all 6 of us with their partners, put in 4 big vegetable boxes. And
is this in California or here?
In Caledon, right here.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know, this spring, at the place we're staying right now, there's like a 25 or 30 foot by 20 foot garden that was put in, and the vegetables that are coming out of it. And so what's interesting is there's people, I think, lots of interest at the places where people were buying the vegetable plants. They ran out of the vegetable plants. They ran out of the seeds. You know, and my kids were showing us various videos on how to do different way of gardening and intermingling and complementary plantings. And so there's the youth getting interested. People had to stay at home a lot more because of the COVID. So there's real, you know, interest in growing the gardens with the kids and doing that as an educational thing. I mean, I would say the biggest thing that I've noticed is this whole gardening just blossomed. And of course, right now the harvest is incredible. So there's zucchinis and tomatoes and cucumbers, and I mean, it's just really wonderful, which promotes the plant-rich diet.
Yep. Right? Now, look, there was an article in the paper or someplace in the last couple of days about getting rid of your lawns. This has been one of my little secret projects. I have a lawn out there that belongs to this entire 24-story building, and I can't go dig it up. But if I could, I would, because I don't believe in lawns. I think that, you know, they do take a tremendous amount of water and pesticides and fertilizer and things that are not good for us. And we should be using that space for one of 2 things: vegetables, gardens, or trees. I mean, we definitely need a place to put more trees. And one of the calculations that was made by this group in, I think in Switzerland someplace, they calculated that there are 3 trillion trees on the planet, and that we need 1 more trillion at least. But to get 1 more trillion, we probably have to plant 2 more trillion trees. Most trees don't, you know, you're lucky if you got half of them to live. And then the question was, where are you going to put them? And people can't go 150 miles to plant a tree. They got to plant trees where they are. So my theory is that we should plant trees out in what is now the lawn, and use that for you know, our contribution to reducing global warming. Anyway, that's a particular pet of mine. But if you don't want to do, I can see there's an argument that somebody said, no, if you plant trees in your yard, it's going to, the roots are going to ruin the foundations of your house. I don't know. If so, then go with potatoes or a squash or something, because you could grow vegetables at least, don't you think?
If we all planted trees and gardens, that it not only offers us, you know, the concepts of composting, drawdown solutions of composting, plant-rich diet, reducing food waste, regenerative agriculture, biochar, and then the no-till. Well, that's part of regenerative agriculture. But
agroforestry.
And agroforestry.
Growing fruit trees, not.
Yeah. So if we did that contributes to drawdown and takes in a lot of the solutions, a bunch of the food related solutions. But what it also does is it really has us as human beings reconnect to the earth, connect to each other, reconnect to our roots. That, I have this little story that if we fall in love with the earth and with life, that we will take care of it. And this is, a concept that a teacher in Bellefontaine, it's also in Caledon several years ago when we interviewed her, that was how she taught. She said, I teach the children to fall in love. And I go to a creek and they fall in love with the frogs and the water and the bugs. And then when they see a plastic bottle, they go, oh my gosh, that plastic bottle can't be good for the frogs. I'm going to pick it up. They choose to notice and to act based on their love for life. And I think that's what's so wonderful that we're seeing is the young people and even the families that are falling in love with nature and reconnecting. And I think when we do that, we can't help but take care of it. So
it also seems to me goes with taking care of each other, because and just plain social life. People out there gardening together have to be friendly.
Yes. Yeah,
you don't have any enemies in the garden.
No. And they share. I mean, at my church, we do our church services by Zoom now, and people are arranging to trade tomatoes for zucchinis.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was on a call yesterday, and the person was on the call makes bagels, and she was getting vegetables in exchange. So there's and they're chatting and getting to know each other and connecting, and so there's that whole rich, beautiful harvest of human relations that happens in the same space.
One of the sort of the background questions of Drawdown is global warming happening to us, or is it happening for us?
Isn't that an interesting question?
If it's happening for us, it gives us an enormous opportunity. So we say that climate change or global warming is just beautiful feedback. It's feedback on the way that we humans are living on Earth. The fact is that we have been for at least several hundred years, depleting the Earth's capacity to regenerate. So we've been taking away from life rather than contributing to life on Earth. So this falling in love with Earth is really falling in love with our own ability to be contributors, to be life giving rise to life, rather than be life giving rise to death.
Love it. Love it. You run workshops and so on, or at least you were before the pandemic. Expect you'll go back to it. Tell me a bit about some of these projects that you've done. Maybe I can attend some once in a while. I haven't so far attended except the first one that you did, which just blew me away. It was so wonderful. Tell me what goes on in your workshops.
We offer an introduction to Drawdown. So anybody who wants to do an introduction to Drawdown and sponsor it and have it be, we do it online now, and using materials from a wonderful organization that everybody should also look up, which is the Panchamala Alliance, who have educational materials built from the Drawdown project.
Excuse me to interrupt, but I get things from them. I think I maybe even signed something once. So maybe in some sense I belong, but I don't really know anything about it, except that it seems to be rooted in concern about South American Native people. Is that where it came from? And explain the connection.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so it was an organization founded by some people from the Northern Hemisphere who went to the Amazon jungle, and based on a call from the people of the jungle saying, we need help protecting our territory from you. And so, our way of life is under threat because of the pressures of the outside world, the modern world. And the way that they put it was, we will never be successful in protecting our way of life unless you go back to your part of the world and change the dream of the modern world. So when changing the dream of the modern world is kind of like the same thing as falling in love with nature, and which is really, and becoming a participant in life, which is the way that indigenous people have lived all along. As all my relations, we're truly related to all of it. So the Panchamala Alliance was born as a response to this call from the people of Ecuador in the jungle to say, you need to change the dream of the modern world. So
Pachamama is some Latin American native word, or?
Yeah, it's a word from the Andes language called Quechua, which goes all through the Andes. And the word Pachamama in that language roughly translates as Mother Nature, but it really means the female principle of creative life. It's more broader than, quote, Mother Nature.
Oh, all right. Okay. And somehow out of this project, Pachamama project, came Drawdown, or what's the connection?
The connection is that when one of the original programs was developed called the Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream Symposium was put together, they brought in Paul Hawken as an advisor to that project. And he helped craft the methodology for delivery, which is video facilitated processes. So when Paul began work on the Drawdown book, Pachamama knew about it. And then when it got released, it was immediate. I was working with the team that was developing the programs to the Panchamala Alliance at the time. And when it came out, we said, this changes everything. The fact that there are now proven, scientifically based, peer-reviewed solutions that show us that we can actually reverse global warming, nobody needs to be afraid of that conversation anymore. Nobody needs to just scare people and try to tell people the world's coming to an end, and unless you do X, Y, Z, we're all lost. No, you can present a whole new part of the case. You can put hope and optimism legitimately into the conversation. So Panchamala Alliance said, we're going to make an education program based on Drawdown. And so they packaged the Drawdown material into a series of educational programs that we offer, and hundreds of Pachamama communities around the world offer those courses as well.
Oh, there are hundreds around the world. Okay, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so now once you hold a workshop, is there any continuity? Do people, it's like a club, or do people just go home and back to whatever they were doing before?
Yeah. Well, when we first started doing it, we actually did it in a 13-month plan where we combined every other month. We would do introductions and a series of a course, and then on the odd month we would do we would take the sector. So there were 5 sectors in the original book, and we would offer, or 7, and we would offer a sector summit. And so we would invite panelists and speakers, and they come, and we'd invite the public. And then that also brought people that had been to the introduction to that, people that had been in the courses that had taken a deeper dive, maybe got involved in the Drawdown local work that we were doing and organizing these summits. So it was over a 13-month period that it was a bit of snowballing, you know, and then people took on different projects. So in the course, they're given an opportunity to choose something, a drawdown solution, to go out locally and do a project or an experiment or you know, some action. And so some of those then translated, you know, and found their way into different places, either into our summit, or they found their own direction. People that had come went back to their local area. So in the GTA area, they created their own drawdown hubs. So, you know, there was lots of ways that people got creative in taking the drawdown information and then the deep dive in the course to them back to where they were living, and, you know, either as teachers making up a mini drawdown for their kids, or bringing it to the eco clubs, or, you know, Liz Couture, you know, took it back to her municipality and had them declare climate emergency. So it's really found its different ways. And now recently right now we're in the process of organizing, being part of Countdown.
What is Countdown?
What is Countdown? You go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Countdown is a partnership. It's Countdown Carbon Reduction, and it's a partnership of YouTube and TEDx, along with.
Really, what an interesting idea.
Yeah, initiated by a group called Future Stewards, who were involved in bringing together a lot of the companies in Paris around the Paris Agreement. Remember, there were a lot of CEOs who came there, and it was their influence a lot that pushed the governments into actually coming to an agreement. But Future Stewards took part in that. So those 3 organizations, along with Project Drawdown and Climate Reality Project, and you know, a lot of organizations. So it's coming up this October 10th. There will be a launch of Countdown, and it'll go for a year. And then there'll be next October, there will be a summit. And you know, what happens during that time is going to be a lot up to what people take on individually and groups. So the event that we're doing that's part of Countdown is also sponsoring or launching this year's Toronto Eco Fair. So this will be the 12th Eco Fair. Every other one has been in life, in person, and it draws up to 1,700 people together with booths from different groups that are doing different things, urban farms and solar companies and co-op housing projects and community gardens, all sharing in this one space. But so this year we're doing it online, and so Drawdown Toronto, Green Neighbors Network, Transition Toronto, Climate Fest are the organizations that are pooling resources to put on this year's Eco Fair and do it on.
I'm wondering, is there any, or what is the best place for people to just keep aware of developments as big, either political changes occur that really affect the prospect of reaching drawdown, or actual innovations or actions, campaigns, that sort of thing, there ought to be one website or one magazine anyway that would have a running kind of report on the status of progress. Is there anything like that?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I don't know of any one place to go for that.
Can I propose something? This is not going to fill the gap for the whole world, but a measure that you might find useful. Our project Save the World has a website. And I would love to make space somehow for that kind of updating. We have lots and lots of room for people to enter comments. And so if we could get people who are aware of various elements of these things, regenerative farming or refrigeration, or not eating eating more plants, or that kind of thing. If we could get people who would systematically come and contribute their new findings or new insights, and then get people to come and look at it, that would be a start. Now, I think you're still going to need something more for sure. Yes. But I would really love to offer that as a possibility, or maybe even a page where somebody would make it their job to look for and keep on top of developments and post things there. Could maybe we could look at doing something like that?
Right.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that might work well together with the Drawdown portal that we're currently looking at. So we've got an ongoing project developing.
What do you call it? Drawdown pool?
Drawdown portal.
Well, it's a local action portal. So it's so it's not designed to be globally everything that's available. It's
Well, sure. Let's talk about that. We've come to the end of our conversation for this, but I just want to say you and I will have a further conversation, and I'll put the results on our website. Let's say that, and we'll also put some links to, if you want to send me your links to these various outfits. We'll put it at the end of the video so people can copy it down. Yeah, Satya?
We wanted to mention Rotary.
Oh, right.
Which is something very exciting globally. Why don't you mention?
So there was a group within Rotary, within the international, that started an organization that they called SRAG, Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group, and they campaigned over the course of several years with a campaign that actually won this summer. I think it was in July, that Rotary International adopted environmental sustainability as its 7th area of focus, which is huge. Clubs around the world are now authorized to fund and sponsor projects specifically for environmental sustainability. Now, a lot of them have had sustainability as an aspect of them, but now it's like directly in the charter of what they can do. And that in April of 2019, April of 2019, there was an issue of the Rotarian magazine that not only was putting forward environmental sustainability, but solving the climate crisis in particular. And there's a really wonderful article about Drawdown and the way that Drawdown solutions are applicable to projects that Rotary clubs do. There's now a Drawdown working group within SRAG, within Rotary, to determine how to introducing the Drawdown material to the local clubs. And as you know, those of us who've been associated with Rotary in any way at all know, Rotary gets stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
This concept, what we're calling draw around, that identifies Drawdown Toronto, so the Drawdown offer, the information, the platform, the research, as a piece that supports existing organizations, existing initiatives, existing nonprofits in the work that they're doing, as well as sort of drawing them around each other, sort of like a huddle, a community, and supporting. So we would, as Drawdown Toronto, support them in providing this framework that then provides sort of a common basis and framework to be able to connect to the municipalities and then be able to speak in a common language and sort of a common thread. And so this, what we were saying as Drawdown Toronto is that we really want to be out of business. You know, we don't see ourselves as an organization that needs to have like a particular ongoing role, other than really drawing around all the amazing people and organizations that are doing something.
I'd like to consider this not a one-shot deal, but as a beginning of a conversation where I can get to you and let's see how I can help with, with the Project Save the World. We have the website, which maybe that could be useful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
All right.
Thank you.
Good wishes.
So great to talk to you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
This conversation is one of the weekly series Talk About Saving the World, produced by Peace Magazine and Project Save the World. Please visit our website at tosavetheworld.ca, where you can sign the Platform for Survival, a list of 25 public policy proposals that, if enacted, would greatly reduce the risk of 6 global threats to humankind. Come back next week for another discussion of a serious global issue.